Wait, you benched her. The recruiter's voice cut through the noise of the gym so sharply that even the parents in the bleachers stopped talking. Coach Garrick Vale froze beside the scorer's table. And for the first time all season, he looked nervous. I was still sitting at the end of the bench in my warm-up jacket, sweat cold on my neck, while his daughter Avery stood on the court staring at the floor after missing the final free throw. The scoreboard behind them flashed. WSTBROK 51. Lincoln Central 49. Season over. The crowd had already started filing toward the exits when the recruiter walked straight past Avery, straight past Coach Vale, and looked directly at me. "You're Natasha Morales, right?" Nobody said anything. Not my teammates. Not Coach Vale. Not even Avery. Because they all knew exactly what he was about to ask. 3 hours earlier, I'd been certain this game would decide my future. Not because we were in the state semifinals. Not because college scouts were finally here. But because Coach Vale had spent the last 4 months making sure nobody saw what I could actually do. Every practice, every game, every film session, it was always the same. Avery played. I watched. Didn't matter if I outscored her in scrimmages. Didn't matter if I locked down the best player on the court. Didn't matter if our entire defense collapsed the second I got benched. Coach always had an answer. She understands the system better. She has better instincts. You're just not ready yet, Natasha. Ready. I'd heard that word so many times it started sounding fake. Meanwhile, Avery skipped conditioning drills half the time and still got praised like she carried the team herself. And nobody questioned it. Because Coach Vale wasn't just our coach. In this town, he was basketball. Parents loved him. Teachers defended him. Local reporters quoted him like he was some genius who built the program from nothing. So when he cut my minutes in halfway through the season, everybody assumed he had a reason. Even me. At first. Until the game footage started disappearing. Until recruiters stopped answering my emails. Until one assistant coach accidentally left a stat sheet on the scorer's table showing, I led the team in defensive efficiency, steals and assists. And somehow still averaged less than 9 minutes a game. That's when I realized this wasn't about basketball anymore. Tonight was supposed to be different. The gym was packed with scouts. 3 Division I programs. 1 recruiter from Bakecrest University sitting, courtside with a notebook open the entire game. I saw him watching me during warm-ups. Saw him writing things down when I checked into the third quarter and forced back-to-back turnovers in less than 90 seconds. The crowd exploded. Even the announcer said, "Morales brings a completely different energy defensively." Then Coach Vale pulled me right back out. The whole arena booed. He didn't care. Avery went back in. We lost by 2. And now the recruiter was standing in front of him with an expression that didn't look confused anymore. It looked angry. Coach Vale forced a smile. "She's still developing," he said, motioning toward me without even turning around. "Avery's our complete player." The recruiter blinked slowly. Then he looked back at me. "Developing," he repeated. He opened his folder. And Coach Vale's face immediately lost color. Because whatever was inside that folder, he clearly wasn't supposed to see it. The recruiter pulled out a stack of printed papers, clipped together, with handwritten notes covering the margins. I couldn't see everything from the bench. But I saw enough. My name was at the top. Coach Vale's jaw tightened instantly. "A problem?" he asked, trying to laugh it off. The recruiter didn't laugh back. "In 12 years of scouting," he said, "I've never seen defensive numbers like this from a player getting single-digit minutes." The gym suddenly felt smaller. Parents nearby stopped walking toward the exits and started pretending not to listen. Avery slowly stepped away from her father. And Coach Vale finally looked at me directly. Not angry. Worried. That scared me more than yelling ever could. Because Coach Vale never looked worried. Not when referees missed calls. Not when reporters criticized losses. Not even when parents screamed at him after games. But right now, standing under the bright scorer's table lights with that folder open in front of him. He looked cornered. "She's raw," Coach said carefully. "Stats don't show decision-making." The recruiter flipped a page. "Funny," he replied, "because the game film does." My stomach dropped. Game film. For weeks, clips of my possessions had been disappearing from scouting uploads. I knew that. I'd checked myself. Twice I stayed after practice pretending to stretch, just so I could sneak into the media room later and compare raw footage against the edited files sent to recruiters. Defensive stops missing. Fast breaks cut short. Entire sequences gone. At first I thought it was an accident. Then it kept happening. Only to me. The recruiter looked back at Coach Vale. "We requested full footage from 3 separate schools," he said. "That's the only reason we saw her." A silence spread across the court, so heavy I could hear sneakers squeaking somewhere in the hallway outside the gym. Coach Vale crossed his arms tightly. "You're making assumptions based on limited possessions." "No," the recruiter said. "I think I'm realizing somebody tried very hard to keep this player off our radar." Avery's face went pale. And suddenly, every weird moment from the season slammed back into my head at once. The random benchings. The deleted clips. The way assistant coach Lena stopped talking whenever Coach walked into a room. The emails from recruiters that suddenly turned cold after strong games. The rumor that I had attitude problems. The exact phrase repeated over and over. "Not coachable." I'd heard it from 2 scouts already. Neither could explain where it came from. Coach Vale stepped closer to the recruiter now, lowering his voice enough that most people couldn't hear. "But I could." "She's emotional," he muttered. "Talented, sure, but unstable under pressure." The recruiter stared at him for a long second. Then he asked the question that made my chest tighten. "If that's true." He lifted the folder slightly. "Why did every opposing coach we contacted say the exact opposite?" Coach Vale didn't answer. For the first time all season, nobody moved to defend him either. Not the parents. Not the assistant coaches. Not even Avery. And standing there near the bench, I suddenly realized something that hit harder than the loss itself. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. Somebody had been lying. Deliberately. For months. The recruiter closed the folder slowly. Then he looked at me again. "Natasha," he said, "how much do you actually know about what's been said about you?" Before I could answer, Coach Vale snapped. "We're done here. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell for updates. Your coach has been talking to recruiters behind your back." The sentence sat in my head the entire drive home. Not because I didn't believe it. Because deep down I already had. I barely remember leaving the gym after the recruiter confrontation. Parents kept staring at me in the hallway like they were suddenly seeing a different person than the one who'd sat at the end of the bench all season. Coach Vale disappeared into his office almost immediately after snapping at the recruiter. Avery followed him. Assistant coach Lena didn't. She stood near the exit watching me gather my bag slowly off the floor. Like she wanted to say something, but didn't know if she should. Outside, freezing air hit my face hard enough to wake me up a little. My mom's old Honda was waiting near the curb, headlights glowing weakly through the dark parking lot. The second I got inside, she looked at me carefully. "You okay?" I nodded automatically. Lie. She could tell. Parents always know. But before she could ask anything else, my phone buzzed in my hoodie pocket. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then I opened the message. "Check the scouting uploads tonight." Before they're changed again. No name attached. My stomach twisted instantly. Natasha, my mom asked. Nothing, I said too quickly. Another lie. The whole ride home, I kept replaying the recruiter's words. We requested full footage from 3 separate schools. That meant other teams noticed. Other coaches noticed. People outside our town noticed. So why had nobody said anything sooner? By the time we got home, my little brother Mateo was asleep on the couch with his math workbook still open on his chest. Mom quietly carried him to bed while I stood in the kitchen staring at my phone. 3 missed notifications. 2 from teammates. 1 from social media. The first teammate message came from Kiara. You okay after that? The second was shorter. Coach is freaking out RN. I ignored both and opened the school athletics website instead. Game film archives loaded slowly. State semifinal. Lincoln Central versus Westbrook. I clicked. At first everything looked normal. Avery's introductions. Warm-ups. Crowd shots. Then the game started. And I immediately noticed something wrong. Again. Midway through the 3rd quarter, there was supposed to be a sequence where I checked in, stole the ball twice and forced a timeout. The exact sequence that shifted momentum. The crowd had exploded so loudly, even the announcers talked over each other. But now, the footage jumped. 1 second I was stepping onto the court. The next, Avery was shooting free throws. My pulse spiked. No way. I rewound it. Same thing. The clip was gone. Not shortened. Removed completely. I clicked another game. Same pattern. Any stretch where I played especially well either disappeared or cut away early. Meanwhile, Avery's possessions stayed untouched, even the bad ones. I sat back slowly in my chair. This wasn't favoritism anymore. This was intentional. My phone buzzed again. This time from assistant coach Lena. Can you meet tomorrow before practice? Don't tell coach. I stared at the message for several seconds. Then another notification appeared before I could respond. An email. Baycrest University Athletics. My chest tightened instantly. I opened it so fast my fingers slipped. Dear Natasha Morales. We appreciated the opportunity to evaluate you this evening. We would like additional clarification regarding feedback we previously received from your coaching staff concerning your attitude, leadership consistency, and emotional discipline under adversity. I stopped breathing for a second. Leadership consistency. Emotional discipline. What feedback? I kept reading. However, after reviewing independent game film, we are interested in continuing evaluation. Independent game film. Not Coach Vale's footage. Not school uploads. Independent. I leaned back hard in my chair, heart pounding now. Because suddenly everything made sense in the worst possible way. Recruiters weren't ignoring me. They were being warned about me. And if Baycrest noticed, how many other schools had heard the same things? I opened my recruiting email folder. Dozens of conversations from earlier in the season. Programs that sounded interested at first. Then slowly faded away. Responses getting shorter. More distant. Until eventually they stopped replying altogether. At the time I blamed myself. Maybe my stats weren't good enough. Maybe my reduced minutes made me look inconsistent. Maybe coach was right. Maybe I wasn't ready. Now I felt sick realizing somebody might have been poisoning those conversations before they even started. A knock suddenly hit my bedroom door. I jumped. Mom stepped halfway inside. You're still awake? Yeah. She studied my face carefully. You played well tonight. The question hurt more than it should have. Because she hadn't even gotten to see me play much. Nobody had. A little, I said quietly. She nodded slowly like she knew there was more I wasn't saying. Then she glanced toward my laptop screen. You hear from any schools? I hesitated. Money sat underneath that question whether either of us said it out loud or not. Rent had gone up again last month. Her hospital shifts kept getting longer. And college without basketball. That wasn't happening. I don't know yet, I answered finally. She gave me a tired smile anyway. Well, somebody would be stupid not to want you. The second she left the room, I nearly lost it. Because for months I'd started believing the opposite. My phone buzzed again. Another text. Unknown number. You really think deleted clips are the worst thing he's done? I stared at the screen. Then another message appeared immediately after. Ask yourself why recruiters suddenly think you're difficult. My chest tightened hard. Whoever this was, they knew everything. And before I could even process that, my phone started ringing. Coach Vale. At 11:42 p.m. I let it ring twice. 3 times. Then answered carefully. Hello. Silence. Then his voice. Calm. Too calm. Tomorrow morning, he said, be in my office before school. A pause. We need to discuss your future with this program. The line went dead. And for the first time all season, I genuinely thought he might try to get rid of me completely. Coach Vale's office door was already open when I got to school the next morning. That alone felt wrong. Usually he made players wait outside until he decided to acknowledge them. Power move. Everything with him was a power move. The hallway smelled like floor polish and stale coffee, and the fluorescent lights above the athletic wing buzzed quietly while students drifted toward first period. Coach sat behind his desk, flipping through papers like he hadn't just called me at almost midnight. Like nothing had happened after the game. Close the door, he said. I did. The click echoed harder than it should have. For a few seconds he didn't speak. Just kept pretending to read. Control the silence. Make the other person uncomfortable first. That was another one of his tricks. Finally he leaned back in his chair. You embarrassed the program last night. I stared at him. I embarrassed the program. The scene after the game, he said, you encouraged it. A laugh almost escaped me from pure disbelief. I didn't even say anything. You didn't have to. There it was again. That calm voice. Somehow worse than yelling. He folded his hands together. College programs look for stability, Natasha. Drama around a player creates concerns. My stomach tightened immediately. Did you tell them that? His expression didn't change. Tell them what? That I'm unstable. A pause. Then the smallest shrug. Recruiters ask for honest evaluations. Honest. I thought about all the deleted footage. All the benchings. All the rumors. And suddenly I couldn't sit there quietly anymore. You told them I had attitude problems. I told them you struggle emotionally when things don't go your way. That's not true. You're proving my point right now. The words hit like a trap snapping shut. Every response I gave could be twisted into evidence against me. Coach leaned forward slightly. You're talented, he said, but talent without maturity becomes a liability. I clenched my jaw hard enough it hurt. Why are you doing this? For the first time, something flickered in his eyes. Not guilt. Annoyance. Doing what? You keep benching me even when everyone sees what's happening. Everyone. He almost smiled. Natasha, one good defensive stretch doesn't make you indispensable. I stared at him in disbelief. One stretch. You want honesty, he interrupted. Avery understands how to lead this team, you still play emotionally. There it was again. Avery. Always Avery. His daughter's name lived inside every conversation like nobody else mattered. You already decided before the season even started, I said quietly. That finally got a reaction. His expression hardened instantly. You need to be very careful right now. The room went silent. Outside in the hallway, lockers slammed between classes. Inside, it felt impossible to breathe. Coach stood slowly from behind his desk. You think recruiters only evaluate talent? He asked. They call coaches because character matters. I didn't answer. Because now I understood exactly what he was admitting without admitting it. He moved closer. Close enough that his voice dropped lower. If schools think you're difficult, he said, those opportunities disappear very fast. A cold wave rolled through my chest. Not a warning. A threat. And the worst part. He knew I couldn't really fight back. He controlled the program. The minutes. The film. The recommendations. Without a coach backing you, recruiting could die instantly. Especially in a town like ours. You can still salvage this, he continued, but only if you stop making yourself the victim. I looked at him carefully then. Really looked. And for the first time all season, I noticed something underneath the confidence. Fear. Tiny. Hidden. But there. Because despite everything he controlled, the recruiter last night had rattled him. Badly. A knock interrupted the silence. Assistant coach Lena cracked the door open. Sorry, she said carefully. Principal wants the tournament reports by noon. Coach didn't take his eyes off me. Later. Lena hesitated. Then noticed my expression. And something in hers changed too. Concern. Coach finally stepped back toward his desk. We're done here, he said. I turned toward the door without another word. But right before I reached it. Natasha. I stopped. His voice sharpened. You should think very carefully before believing people who want to create problems around this team. I looked over my shoulder. And you should think carefully, I said quietly, about how many people already know. For the first time since I'd entered the office, Coach Vale looked caught off guard. Only for a second. But I saw it. I walked out before he could answer. The hallway outside felt freezing compared to his office. Students moved around normally. Laughing. Talking. Completely unaware, my future was basically being negotiated through lies behind closed doors. Natasha. I turned. Assistant coach Lena stood near the gym entrance clutching a folder tightly against her chest. Walk with me, she said quickly. We headed down the side hallway toward the auxiliary gym, where nobody really went during class hours. The second we were alone, she exhaled hard. What did he say? That I'm emotional, unstable, difficult. Lena closed her eyes briefly like she'd expected that answer. Then she looked at me directly. You need to start documenting everything. My heartbeat sped up instantly. What does that mean? She glanced toward the hallway before lowering her voice. It means conversations, emails, messages, anything. Coach is telling recruiters not to take me. Lena hesitated. That hesitation told me enough before she even spoke. He's influencing things. Influencing. Such a careful word for something so ugly. Why? Another hesitation. I don't know everything, she admitted, but I know he's been making calls before tournaments. A cold silence settled between us. About Avery. Lena looked away. That was answer enough too. My chest tightened so hard it actually hurt. All season. All those practices. All those speeches about earning minutes. About trust. About discipline. And behind the scenes, he'd already decided who mattered. Lena suddenly handed me the folder she'd been carrying. Don't let him know you have this. Inside were printed stat sheets. Advanced metrics. Deflections. Defensive efficiency. Assist ratios. My name sat at the top of nearly every category. Not Avery's. Mine. I looked up at her slowly. These aren't the stats posted for recruiters. I know. My stomach dropped. Then where did the others come from? Lena's expression turned grim. Coach edits what gets circulated publicly. Before I could respond, a voice echoed from the far hallway. Coach Ortiz. We both turned instantly. Coach Vale stood at the entrance to the auxiliary gym, watching us, and judging by the look on his face. He knew exactly what Lena had just handed me. Coach Vale didn't raise his voice. That made it worse. He just stood there at the entrance of the auxiliary gym, with one hand in his pocket, staring at the folder in my hands like he was calculating damage. Assistant coach Lena straightened immediately. I was giving her tournament breakdowns, she said. Coach looked at her for a long moment. Then at me. Natasha, he said calmly, wait outside. The pressure in the room changed instantly. Lena noticed it too. So did I. Because this wasn't about basketball anymore. This was about control slipping. I'm fine here, I said. Coach's jaw tightened slightly. Outside now. For a second I thought about refusing. But Lena gave the smallest shake of her head. Not fear. Warning. So I walked out into the hallway, heart hammering hard enough I could feel it in my throat. The gym doors stayed cracked open behind me. Voices carried through faintly. You went behind my back. That's not what happened. You're undermining this program. This stopped being about the program months ago. Silence. Then Coach's voice dropped too low to hear clearly. A second later Lena came out, holding her clipboard tighter than before. Coach didn't follow. She looked shaken. What did he say? I asked immediately. He's angry. That's not an answer. She glanced back toward the gym doors. Then lowered her voice. You need to be careful now. The seriousness in her face made my stomach twist. Careful about what? He thinks people are turning against him. People. Not recruiters. Not scouts. People. Meaning this was getting bigger. The hallway bell rang suddenly, flooding the corridor with students. Conversations echoed everywhere as everyone rushed toward class. Lena stepped aside with me near the trophy case. Listen carefully, she said quietly. Do not confront him alone again. Why? Another hesitation. He's desperate. That word stayed with me all day. Desperate. Not confident. Not untouchable. Desperate. By lunch, the entire school seemed weirdly tense. Whispers followed me through the cafeteria. A couple students actually stared openly now. My teammate Kiara slid into the seat across from me carrying her tray carefully. What happened after the game? She asked immediately. I shrugged. Nothing. That's a lie. She leaned closer. My dad heard recruiters arguing with Coach in the hallway. I froze. Recruiters. Plural. My pulse jumped. There were more. Kiara nodded slowly. Apparently Bakecrest wasn't the only school questioning things. For the first time in weeks, something dangerous started replacing the exhaustion sitting in my chest. Hope. Tiny. Careful. But real. Then Kiara said something that killed it almost immediately. Coach is telling parents you've been creating locker room problems. I stared at her. What? He said players feel uncomfortable around you lately. The anger hit so suddenly I almost stood up. Locker room problems. I barely even spoke during games anymore. Half the team ignored me because they were scared of ending up on Coach's bad side too. And now he was spreading this to parents. Kiara looked uncomfortable. I don't think people fully believe him, she admitted, but he keeps saying colleges care about character. Character. There was that word again. He kept building the same story from different angles. emotional, difficult, unstable, bad teammate, not coachable, a narrative. And the terrifying part was how easily adults accepted it because it came from him. That afternoon at practice, the atmosphere felt poisoned. Nobody joked during warm-ups. Nobody talked loudly. Even Avery looked tense. Coach Vale acted completely normal, which somehow felt more threatening than if he'd exploded. Defensive rotations, he called sharply, Avery with starters. Of course. I moved automatically towards second unit again. Then Coach blew the whistle. Actually, he said, pointing at me, Natasha, scout team. A couple girls exchanged confused looks instantly. Scout team. I hadn't run scout team all season. Not once. It was basically punishment duty for younger bench players. Coach ignored everyone's reactions. We're preparing for Eastview spacing, move. Humiliation crawled up my neck immediately. And he knew exactly what he was doing. Because recruiters still occasionally attended practices before playoff games. Today included. Near the far bleachers sat two adults with evaluation folders. One of them looked familiar. Bakecrest. Coach started practice hard and fast. Avery ran primary offense. Every play flowed through her. Meanwhile, I spent 30 straight minutes pretending to be opposing players, while Coach interrupted constantly anytime I did something well. No, Natasha, Eastview's guards don't pressure like that. Whistle. Again. Wrong angles. Whistle. Again. Too aggressive. Every correction came instantly. Every mistake Avery made got ignored completely. Finally, during a scrimmage sequence, Avery lost the ball under pressure for the fourth time. I stole it clean and finished the layup. The Bakecrest recruiter wrote something down immediately. Coach blew the whistle so violently it echoed through the gym. Reset. I bounced the ball back toward him. What did I do wrong? His eyes locked onto mine. Everything doesn't need to become a performance. The gym went silent. Everybody heard that. Avery looked down immediately. Because even she knew how unfair it sounded. I swallowed hard. You told me to compete. I told you to understand your role. The words landed like a slap. Your role. Not your position. Not your responsibilities. Your role. Meaning he'd already decided exactly where I belonged. And judging by the silence in that gym, everyone else finally understood it too. Then something happened that nobody expected. One of the recruiters stood up. Bakecrest. He closed his evaluation folder slowly. And before leaving, he looked directly at Coach Vale and said, You know we can recognize suppression when we see it, right? The entire gym froze. Coach didn't answer. Because for the first time all season, someone with real authority had said it out loud. Nobody moved after the recruiter said it. The squeak of sneakers stopped. Basketballs stopped bouncing. Even the managers sitting near the equipment rack froze. Coach Vale stood near half-court gripping his whistle so tightly the cord dug into his hand. The Bakecrest recruiter didn't look away. You know we can recognize suppression when we see it, right? Every player in the gym looked between them like they were waiting for someone to deny it. Coach finally forced a laugh. I think that's a pretty serious accusation. It's a serious situation. The recruiter stepped down from the bleachers onto the court. Calm. Controlled. Which somehow made everything heavier. We've reviewed 6 games from independent sources, he continued. Your public uploads don't match the raw footage. My chest tightened. Players around me exchanged stunned looks instantly. Independent sources. So it was real. All of it. Coach folded his arms. You're overreacting to editing inconsistencies. No, the recruiter replied. I'm reacting to a player with elite defensive metrics being hidden behind manipulated evaluations. Nobody spoke. Avery looked like she wanted to disappear. Coach tried one last time to regain control. Natasha has potential, he said carefully, but recruiting at that level requires maturity and consistency. The recruiter nodded slowly. Interesting. He opened his folder. Because every opposing coach we contacted described her as disciplined, composed, and highly coachable. The gym went dead silent. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. Opposing coaches. Not people loyal to Coach Vale. Not parents. Not school staff. People with no reason to protect me. The recruiter flipped another page. But your evaluations, he continued, used phrases like emotionally unstable, difficult under pressure, disruptive in team environments. He looked up. The wording was nearly identical every time. Coach's expression finally cracked. Just slightly. But enough. And everybody saw it. Kiara slowly looked toward me in disbelief. Assistant coach Lena stepped forward before coach could speak again. That's because he was making the calls personally. Every head turned toward her instantly. Coach whipped around. Lena. No. Her voice shook at first. Then steadied. I stayed quiet too long already. The room felt like it tilted. Coach stared at her like he genuinely couldn't believe she'd said that publicly. Lena looked directly at the recruiters now. I kept copies of the original stat reports, she said, and logs from the editing requests sent to media staff. My stomach dropped. She had proof. Actual proof. Coach's face lost color fast. You're throwing away your career over misunderstandings, he snapped. No, Lena answered quietly, you threw yours away. Avery suddenly spoke for the first time. Daddy. Her voice cracked. He turned toward her immediately. Avery, stay out of this. But she didn't. And the look on her face hurt almost worse than everything else. Because she looked ashamed. Not defensive. Not angry. Ashamed. You said it would just help recruiters notice me first, she whispered. You never said you were destroying her opportunities. The gym erupted into whispers instantly. Coach looked stunned. Avery. You told me everybody exaggerates film, she continued, tears forming now. You said Natasha would still get offers eventually. I couldn't even process hearing this out loud. Months of wondering what was wrong with me. Why schools stopped answering. Why every good performance somehow disappeared. Why I kept getting told I wasn't ready. And the entire time. It had been deliberate. Coach looked around the gym desperately now, like he was searching for someone still on his side. Nobody stepped forward. Not players. Not managers. Not parents watching through the upper bleachers. Nobody. The Baycrest recruiter closed his folder. We'll be forwarding our findings to the district athletic board, he said flatly. That finally broke Coach's composure completely. You think this is uncommon, he snapped suddenly. Every coach pushes their players. Not by sabotaging children, the recruiter replied. Children. That word hit differently. Because Coach always talked like this was business. Competition. Strategy. But standing there under the practice gym lights, it suddenly looked exactly what it was. An adult using power to bury a 17-year-old girl's future, so his daughter wouldn't lose attention. Coach looked at me then. Actually looked at me. And for 1 second, I saw something raw underneath all the control. Not regret. Fear. Because he knew it was over. The silence stretched. Then the recruiter turned toward me. Natasha Morales, he said clearly, Baycrest University would officially like to invite you for a scholarship visit. I stopped breathing. The gym blurred slightly. Kiara grabbed my arm hard beside me. Avery covered her mouth. And after everything that happened, everything he did, Coach Vale had to stand there and hear it. Out loud. In front of everyone. The player he buried. The player he benched. The player he called unstable. Was the one getting the offer. Not his daughter. Me. 3 weeks later, the district placed Coach Vale on administrative leave pending investigation. More former players came forward after the story spread online. Not all about recruiting. Some about favoritism. Some about intimidation. Some about being quietly pushed aside when they threatened the image he wanted. Assistant coach Lena submitted emails, stat records, and editing requests directly to investigators. Avery stopped attending open gym entirely for a while. People blamed her at first online, but the truth was more complicated than that. She benefited from what happened. But she wasn't the one controlling it. The real damage came from the adult who convinced everyone his authority mattered more than fairness. As for me, the strangest part wasn't getting the scholarship offer. It was realizing I wasn't crazy. For months I'd questioned myself every single day. Maybe I wasn't good enough. Maybe I was too emotional. Maybe Coach was right. Then suddenly complete strangers looked at the exact same footage and saw something completely different. The truth. A month later, I stood alone inside Bakecrest's practice facility during my official visit. The gym was massive. Bright hardwood. Championship banners overhead. Shoes squeaking somewhere in the distance from another workout. Coach Marcus Chen walked over holding a basketball under one arm. "You nervous?" he asked. "A little." He smiled. "That's normal." Then he tossed me the ball. Not carefully. Not hesitantly. Like he already trusted me to catch it. And somehow that almost made me emotional. No suspicion. No politics. No bench waiting for someone else to fail first. Just opportunity. I looked around the empty court quietly. Then Coach Chen said something I don't think I'll ever forget. "The right people usually see the truth eventually," he said, "sometimes later than they should, but they see it." I looked down at the ball in my hands, then up at the rims. And for the first time in a long time, I shot without feeling like someone was trying to erase me.